Here's your wrestling news for December 16th, 2020. And your headlines for today include: is Keith Lee being taken down a few pegs by WWE? The real reason why Lana got sidelined from WWE TLC despite defeating Nia Jax is finally revealed. WWE asked writers to create a list of underutilized superstars. Is Jim Johnston being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? Kenny Omega trolls Xavier Woods and WWE. Shane McMahon contacted Vince Russo? The reason behind their meeting is finally revealed. Mike Chioda drops a bombshell about Montreal Screwjob in a way that fans had never heard before. AJ Styles' reaction to Swoggle's Weenomenal 1 parody on Impact Wrestling. Ryback calls Vince McMahon an old cuck while dragging WWE Raw this week, and more. We're kicking off with Raw as Keith Lee lost clean to The Miz and John Morrison this week, and it may be the first of many losses for the former NXT champion. Following reports that Lee is one of 5 superstars to be sent down to the Performance Center for further training, Vince Russo discussed the Limitless One's situation on the latest edition of SK Wrestling's Legion of Raw, saying, "Here's the fascinating thing to me, okay? We read earlier in the week that Keith Lee was sent back to NXT for training during the week. So when I'm seeing Keith Lee get beat here, this is them taking Keith Lee down a few pegs. I know how it works. This guy thinks too highly of himself. Let's take him down a few pegs." Russo added that Vince McMahon sending Lee to the Performance Center was once again an indicator that the chairman doesn't watch NXT's product, adding, "Vince did not watch ECW, Vince did not watch WCW, it was WWE 24/7. He never watched the competing product. I'm just getting blown away because now Vince is sending Keith Lee back to NXT because Vince is deeming that he's not ready. Okay, so then my question is, then why was he brought up in the first place? Which leads me to answer, Vince never saw him work in NXT. So I understand you don't watch ECW, NXT is the WWE, bro, it ain't WCW. This is your minor league company, bro. He's not watching it. For you to bring this guy up and deem he's not ready and he needs to go back down, you weren't watching him." Lee is a hugely talented superstar, though does need more of a character on the main roster, and here's hoping this latest loss is a blip and we see big things for the former NXT champion down the line. Speaking of Raw, this week's show also saw Lana defeat Nia Jax, only to be attacked by Jax and Shayna Baszler post-match, with Asuka being attacked backstage before she could make the save. Lana once again gave a great performance selling the ambush, garnering even more sympathy, though WWE Creative now has some big decisions to make regarding this Sunday's Women's Tag Team title match. Coming out of Raw, there was some speculation that since Lana's injury is just for storyline purposes, that she could appear at TLC and help Asuka win, presumably by putting Nia Jax through a table, similarly to what the Irresistible Force has done to her for months. PW Insider are now reporting, though, that Lana is expected to be off WWE TV for several weeks, maybe even a month, and the footage from WWE of Lana being stretched from the ring only helps this idea. In regards to Lana's replacement, the popular theory is Charlotte Flair, who promised to wrestle before 2020 is over, and is in phenomenal shape, according to her Instagram. The women's tag team titles is one of a few accolades the Queen is yet to accomplish in WWE, and that could change this Sunday. While the Queen is no stranger to gold, the same can't be said for everyone, as there is no shortage of superstars that the company isn't pushing. It looks like the WWE is more than aware of this, as WrestleVotes are noting that writers were recently asked who is underutilized in the company, as WWE wanted to know which names could shine in the right circumstances. There were plenty of names from across the company, but nearly all those lists included some fan favorites, including Cesaro, Angel Garza, Chad Gable, Carmella, and Peyton Royce. Time will tell if any of these names receive any better treatment down the line, but at least the WWE themselves are aware there's a problem. Now, if you've been watching WWE long enough, you know that a theme song can make or break a character, and many themes fans love were created by Jim Johnston. WWE's composer from the 1980s until 2017, Johnston spoke to Reese Riley on the Kiwi Talks YouTube channel this week, and despite creating themes for the likes of The Rock, The Undertaker, The Ultimate Warrior, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, revealed that he hasn't been asked to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Despite speculation of stage fright, Johnston dismissed claims that this would be the reason he'd decline an induction, but noted it's bizarre he hasn't even been asked. Talking about names like Snoop Dogg and Drew Carey being inducted, Johnston said nobody understands what criteria makes someone an inductee, but said he wouldn't be happy with WWE, quote, booting my ass out of the door and now saying we want you in the Hall of Fame. There's clearly no love lost between WWE and Johnston, especially after he was fired 3 years ago after decades of work, so don't expect to see or hear him in WWE anytime soon. Now 2020 is coming to an end and not a moment too soon, and after a difficult year for everyone, WWE gave the year a send-off and welcomed 2021 with a pretty great video. The animated version of 2020, which was kicked to the curb by Drew McIntyre, was animated to look like the Mucinex monster, and this got a lot of reactions online. When Xavier Woods said he stands in complete awe of this year, Kenny Omega had some fun and joked that he thought Woods said he stands in AEW and was ready to ask for his release rather than share the same company with the New Day star. Omega is having a blast as the AEW World Champion, and whilst we're sure Woods would be a great fit in AEW, the 5-year deals the entire New Day signed last year means that won't be happening. We are looking at former WWE superstar Vito next, who's found quite an interesting way to make money thanks to his years in wrestling. The former WWE and WCW star has started up Vito Super Souvenirs with the catchy slogan, "Buy with Finesse from VSS," and is selling off some of his own wrestling memorabilia, with some items being hand-delivered to some lucky auction winners. One item up for auction was the often forgotten WCW Hardcore Championship, a title Vito won twice, and with a career that lasted from 1990 to 2014, the full-blooded Italian will have plenty more to sell when the auction resumes this Saturday. Back to Raw, and as United States Champion, Bobby Lashley has had a lot of fine treatment lately, and this is reportedly down to Vince McMahon himself. Ringside News has learned that Lashley's fortunate booking is because he may be being groomed for something bigger down the line, and is seen as more of a star by the boss than others on the roster. It doesn't seem that WWE is building Lashley up for anything specific, however, though a lot of fans, as well as the Almighty, want to see Lashley face Brock Lesnar in the future. Of course, that match isn't possible right now as Lesnar isn't part of WWE, and we'll have to see what comes next for the Almighty and his protective booking. Speaking of the Red brand, earlier this year the company nixed the Raw Underground segments as they didn't want contamination across the 3 brands, and despite plenty of critics of the worked shoot fights, there were plenty of fans, including Vince Russo. On the latest episode of Legion of Raw, Russo said that he was emailing Shane McMahon about the Raw Underground concept, and the boss's son was asking for Russo's opinions on the segments. It's entirely possible that Raw Underground will return when things get back to normal and superstars can intermingle again, and with Shane not being seen on WWE TV since the Underground got scrapped, it could be a matter of time before the best in the world is back on our screens. We're looking back at Survivor Series 1997, a show that lives in infamy for the Montreal Screwjob, and now we know more about that fateful night. During his Monday mailbag show, former WWE referee Mike Chioda spoke about the show, saying that Bret Hart was nervous on the day and felt that something was going to happen. Chioda added that though Bret hoped the company would play fair with him as he'd always been a professional to the company, and that what fans saw happen wasn't the only thing planned. Chioda explained that during one part of the match, he was supposed to run down and start a 3 count when Shawn was pinning Bret, only to be blocked by Owen Hart. That never happened, as whilst Chioda and Owen were waiting, Bret got screwed, leaving both men to wonder what happened as referee Earl Hebner fled the scene. Even over 20 years later, the Montreal Screwjob continues to be one of the most controversial nights in the history of wrestling, and now we know that even those backstage were being fooled. Over to Impact next, as Hornswoggle recently emerged with an AJ Styles parody gimmick, and now the Phenomenal One has weighed in on the Weenomenal One. According to Fightful, Styles wasn't aware that his character would be used on Impact before the show, but with that being said, Styles thought the character was great based on those Fightful spoke to. There's no known issues with Impact using AJ's TNA theme song and entrance, as they're still the company's property, and the parody is reportedly a big hit backstage in both the Impact Wrestling and WWE locker rooms. With custom ring gear to emulate the former two-time WWE World Champion, Impact clearly invested in the AJ Swoggle gimmick, and we'll have to see if he comes around again. Back to WWE, and Pat McAfee's team came up short at NXT TakeOver War Games, but despite this setback, the former NFL puncher caught the attention of someone very important. In an interview with ESPN, Stone Cold Steve Austin praised McAfee's performance in the ring and on the microphone, saying, "His verbal skills, he's slaying everybody, but he's not afraid to go out there and put it all on the line. You wouldn't expect it from someone who goes out there and kicks a football, but Pat McAfee is..." Austin's praise didn't stop there, as he gave McAfee an A for all his work, and the rattlesnake follows on from CM Punk, who recently said that everyone in NXT should be embarrassed that McAfee has walked in and became the best on the mic. McAfee might take a break from the ring after his physical loss at War Games, and although the Undisputed Era thinks the NFL punter doesn't belong in a WWE ring, there's plenty of bigger names who disagree. One man who fans certainly won't be seeing in a WWE ring is Ryback, who's once again leveled a barrage of insults at Vince McMahon. During this week's edition of Monday Night Raw, the big guy made his feelings known on Twitter. "Watching Raw just doesn't feel like I'm watching the best or biggest wrestling show or promotion anymore. The entire production lacks energy. Work on that at Vince McMahon, you old cuck." It's interesting that the former WWE star singled out this week's show, as we reported that the latest Raw was much calmer backstage than in recent months. And given that Ryback isn't alone in his criticism of the product, let's see if Vince McMahon can turn things around. And we're ending today with news from New Japan Pro Wrestling, as Chris Jericho last appeared for the company back at Wrestle Kingdom 14, where he picked up a hard-earned win over Hiroshi Tanahashi. Of course, due to the ongoing global situation, fans haven't been able to see Jericho in New Japan since then, but that's not the only reason he's not competed for the promotion. On Wrestling Observer Radio, Meltzer explained that New Japan CEO Harold Meiji held off bringing Jericho back due to the cost of the former AEW World Champion, though now Meiji has been replaced by Tankami Obari. Meltzer went on to explain that Jericho doesn't have a contract with New Japan, but there is renewed interest in bringing him back after the world gets back to normal. Until then, fans shouldn't expect to see Jericho back in a New Japan ring, and we'll have to wait and see if Y2J is able to compete at New Japan Dominion next summer.